I'm going to kind of take another approach to this idea of the value of paid information tools. Mostly because I was a novice when I came to this industry, and I was trying to understand why some people pay for research tools and why so many companies don't have anything. So I started a series of studies several years ago to try to understand this. So I want to give you a quick little history of it first, because I think it'll lead up to where I am today with the idea of the value to the business that it brings. So we started out in 2006 to try to understand what role do paid information tools have in the research process, period. How do they help their innovation? What do they do for them? And all this research, by the way, is available from your account manager and in great detail. I'm going to give you a synopsis of all of it. But in summary for the first one, essentially what we found out was that the researchers in 2006 said they can't live without this type of information, that trying to do research without access to the research of others is like flying blind. You don't know where to go, you're reinventing the wheel, you're doing unnecessary research. We can't live without it. So the question that came to us was, well, if they really can't live without it, is there any correlation in research success and those companies that provide these tools for them? So the next study we did was to try to answer that question. It was called a correlation study. It was the effect of these tools on the research outcome. So could we find out if companies who provided these tools were more successful in their research outcomes than those that did not? And we measured things such as patent output, beating the competitors to market, those types, all the kinds of issues you would typically measure in research productivity. And what we found out was that companies that do provide these types of tools are 8 times more likely to be successful in their R&D. And it's a very complicated study because it was a correlation between 2 sets of information cross-tabbed to come up with this. But the result was that they were 8 times more likely to come up with or be successful in their research program if they provided these tools for the researchers. The next question, which was something Rose touched on, was about free versus paid. And there is a role for free search in the marketplace. And this came up because many companies who did not pay for research tools thought they could answer all their questions with Google or Google Scholar or some other type of free tool out there. And so we wanted to find out where these tools had their place. And so the study was about where these tools fit and how they affected the productivity. In a very simple type research, Google was just fine. But quickly in the type of research that goes on within your companies, it became more technical and more complicated, and the effectiveness of these tools went down quickly. And the paid search tools were about 3 times more productive for researchers, and there's a lot of data behind this to look at it, but that's kind of the one number to remember, that they were 325% or 3 times more productive using the paid search tools than using Google. Now, these first 3 studies were not about Elsevier. There are some bits and pieces there where we were trying to measure Elsevier, but they were not about Elsevier. They were about the value of these tools. Because I found when I came over to this business that the information professionals yourselves believed in these tools vehemently. Talking to you, to use an expression we use in the America sometimes, is like preaching to the choir. You were already the believers. We were trying to find out about the people who didn't know about these tools, why they should have them. And so we weren't trying to sell Elsevier here. We were trying to understand the marketplace. But then, being a salesman that I am, I said, well, let me find out what Elsevier's products do and what kind of impact do our tools have. Oops. And so, well, I didn't do that very well. Oh, sorry. We wanted to find out if there's a return on investment for having Science Direct. So now we had a large enough base of corporate customers. Back in 2006, we had a few hundred at the most corporate customers around the world. Now we have literally thousands and thousands of customers. So could we survey these people, corporate customers, and find out what sort of impact this would have on there? Did they find that, did the librarians and the researchers, knowing the cost that were involved in the buying of this tool, find that it was giving them more value than they were paying for. And 9 out of 10 said, yes, it brings more value to my research than what it cost. Fortunately for Elsevier, it was rated very high against other competitors. So like I said, I'm a salesperson, so I was trying to figure out how Elsevier brought value to it. But then I started running into people that weren't librarians. And they couldn't understand why anybody would pay for these tools, or if they were paying for them, why they should continue to pay for them. So at a call that sticks out in my mind was at a very large international pharmaceutical company that used Science Direct, thousands and thousands of downloads per year, thousands and thousands of researchers per year were using the product. They all seemed to love it. They spent a considerable amount of money on it. But a new person was put in charge of all information buying. This person was not a researcher, didn't really understand the value of it, and he said, I really don't care that 10,000 researchers use Science Direct. I don't really care that they download thousands of articles. Can you, as a librarian, talking to our typical contact there, tell me what this is doing for our business? Why should I continue to spend this money? And quite frankly, that's a very hard thing to quantify. It's very hard to explain why these research tools make a difference to the business outcome. So out of that, we decided to try to address this, to try to understand, do these research tools make a difference to the business outcome, to the things that the CEO cares about, the things that probably several managers above all of us care about? They don't really care that the researcher is more productive. They care about the business outcome. At a very large food company that didn't have any tools like this, the researchers were trying to justify to management why they need to spend this. They saw the value, they liked using it, but the management said, well, you've been going along for 50 years without these tools. Why do you need them now? Why do you need to spend all this money? So we felt that we need to come up with a tool that would help our typical contacts sell up the ladder to business management or allow us to do it. So we surveyed 57,000 of our users across all of our products across all the world to try to come up with some quantitative, some statistical information on how these tools make a difference to the business outcomes, but also gather some qualitative information. So we have literally hundreds of case studies with qualitative information about how these tools impacted their business, how it made an impact on their financial outcomes. So we surveyed across the world. About a third of the respondents came from Asia, a third from Americas, and a third from Europe. So this is very global in its nature. All the people that responded are involved in some way in R&D activities. And they're from a variety of companies. Some are from the process industries like pharmaceuticals or chemicals. Some are from discrete, such as automotive manufacturers. And you can see some of the companies. I think there's a few people here in the room that maybe come from some of these companies. So your researchers answer this. We never publish, by the way, the direct results of any one researcher and put a name to it. So it's all very proprietary. We wouldn't do that. However, you can ask your account manager if he can filter or she can filter to your company's respondents, and you can see exactly what your researcher said. We have that information. The companies were from all sizes. We didn't just stick to the big multi-billion-dollar research budget companies. We went to the small ones as well as the big ones. So it's across the board. So the point of all that is that you have a very good global view of what's going on out there, and that with the hundreds of responses we got, the accuracy of this is very high. It's not as if we surveyed 10 people and tried to extrapolate it. We have hundreds of responses. So the four main questions we wanted to answer was, we went back to the research for just a moment, but what is the impact of these types of tools on achieving research objectives? So back to where we started this, we wanted to reiterate this one more time. We also want to find out, where research is involved in the manufacturing process area, outside of the core area where you typically think about research being used, do information tools have an impact on it? Because some of the most costly parts of your businesses are in the processing and the manufacturing areas. So are there things that are happening in R&D using these tools that will impact that? Number three is probably the most important one, I guess, to all of us, is can we quantify the return on investment? Quantify was the key part of this, and that was the difficult part. And then finally, as I said before, do these types of tools help achieve the business objectives, what the person in the C-suite cares about, the top executives? So the way we approached this was, so the first question is, we went back, and I'm giving you a quick one-slide snapshot. You can get great detail from your account managers, but we asked them to try to name all the ways that these types of tools help their research. And it's interesting that one of the things that Rose mentioned was innovation. The number one item on the list, 8 out of 10 researchers said it stimulates innovation. And it's very hard to put a price on that, but it helps them stimulate that. The idea of reinventing the wheel. We've all heard the story of a company going down the path of a type of research only to find out that someone else had already done this, had already patented it, or had already failed at it doing the exact same thing. So unnecessary research, wasted millions of dollars in some cases. So typically about 8 different ways the researchers listed on here. So what we're coming to the conclusion here is that virtually everybody said that these tools make a difference in their research. So we've confirmed what we already learned a few years ago, but wanted to go back to see if in 2010 it was still the same story. Then we want to find out where R&D is involved, does it have any impact on manufacturing? So again, I'm showing you some just quantitative numbers information first. Some of the things we don't often think about is that in the manufacturing area, yield is a very key element. And if you can improve your yield, you greatly improve your profit margins. When R&D tools are used, R&D information tools are used, this was the #1 category they said it impacted, was helping them improve the processes, the yields from their manufacturing. And as we all know, there's significant money involved in this. So the cost of your tools are minimal compared to the impact of just one significant process improvement. Speeding up the production process is #2. We all know how important that is. If you can produce more quickly, get it to the market more quickly, that's important. Quality control assurance, less waste, huge. 1% change in quality control in a manufacturing industry is enormous. 0.5% is enormous. You could be talking about millions of dollars if you're not wasting. So basically, 9 out of 10, 97% of them said it improved in some way. These steps there had a positive impact on it. Some specific examples, and again, I've just put a few quotes up here. I mentioned to you that we have qualitative. So a few over here. Here's a biotech company. Using the R&D tools, a catalytic system component was replaced in a critical process. The savings was about $50,000. Here's one that talked about a 5 to 20% potential operating cost savings on energy that was saved. So they have very specific examples how they did this. Purification processes, millions of dollars you're quoting on here. Even if you minimize these numbers and took 1/10 of them, they're significant enough compared to the cost of using these tools. What do most business managers care about? Revenues and profits. So if you can show cost savings, you're improving the profits. This is the trickiest one of all. How can we quantify the ROI, the return on investment of paid tools? So we took a different approach than some of the very good ways that Rose was talking about, interviewing researchers, getting kind of qualitative information. We took the approach of if you waste research dollars because you're doing unnecessary research, there must be an increase in your cost. How can we try to capture that? Because that was at least the approach that we decided to go down. If we could prove that having these tools would decrease your research costs or prevent you from wasting money, could we then come up with some sort of an ROI on that?